Thank you guys for tuning in to the Regular People podcast. I am your host, Miles. I'm here with Ashton Sawyers, a cool guy, somebody who I've definitely looked up to, even if you don't know it, bro. I've looked up to just because of where you've like transcended. I've seen you, in one position. When I first met you, we were, going to the same church, and then as we kind of started to separate and we kind of go our own ways, I've just seen you, whether that be on, social media or LinkedIn or wherever it is, I've seen you continue to climb. You know what I'm saying? And for one, it makes me proud to see that with someone who I semi-know, who I've been around and interacted with. But it's another thing to see someone who looks like me.
Right.
Achieve those things, and set goals and hit those goals, hit those marks, and still trying to, navigate through life as best we can. So one of the interesting statistics that I've come across, and something that I think is extremely important that people don't really pay attention to. In our community, or not, let me not say in our community, but for African Americans, going to university is, I think, an extremely important part. And I'm not saying that college is everything. I'm not saying that. But when we look at the statistics, right, there's a statistic that I think is really important. It says that 56% of African Americans, choose to go to college, right? And that seems like a really good number.
Right.
Half of us go to try to go to college.
Right.
But then that number gets slim when we start to see how many of those people in that 56% actually go on to, finish college in a 4-year span, which is, supposed to be the thing, to save money and stuff like that. And that number drops down to about 26. So it cuts in half again. But that number cuts in half again when we see the amount of that original 56% actually graduating and getting those degrees. What do you think about that? How does that make you feel?
Man, I can say I've seen it. I've seen it. If I think back to when I started undergrad and who I started that process with, and then who was at that finish line, I see that data. I see that statistic. I think it's important to know that for a lot of people, I have this saying, exposure leads to expansion. And so a lot of people, maybe they have dreams, they have aspirations, but they don't actually know what it takes to get there. So a lot of people have the dream of, I want to go to college, I want to get the degree, I want to do this, I want to do that. But they don't think about what are those steps in between that's going to help you get there. And college is rough. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that it is an easy process. For a lot of people, it's the first time they leave home. It's the first time that they're on their own. It's the first time that they're self-sufficient or semi-self-sufficient. And it's difficult when there are roadblocks or hurdles that are put in your way, whether it's family or an academic advisor or changing your major or financial situation. It's hard to get over those things to reach the goal. And I think that's one area that maybe we don't do a great job in is we talk about college, but we don't talk about 16 hours a semester. We don't talk about an internship during the summertime. We don't talk about what happens when you don't have financial aid, what happens when that scholarship runs out. We talk about the end goal, but we don't focus enough about the middle process to get to the end goal. So we, in some fashions, we create this unrealistic picture for them where we talk about graduation, but we don't talk about waking up for that 8 a.m. on Tuesday. Man. We don't talk about studying all night for that test on Friday and still wanting to go out and get dinner or go to the football game on Saturday. We don't talk about that. We just tell them, go to college, get a degree, and graduate. And yeah, that's the plan, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that comes with that.
So, I mean, and I don't want one of the things that I don't do on this podcast is I tend to stay away from like talking about titles,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
what people do. So, but since we're talking about, higher education, and we're talking about, getting degrees, or it's, in that realm, tell us a little bit about like what you do, and you don't have to mention any names about, who you work for specifically, but what is it that you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I work at a university. I specialize in working with fraternities and sororities. So all of our social organizations that have historical background in being advocates, advocacy, allyship, all of that type of stuff, community service, philanthropy, all the things that, as I described, you come to college for a degree, but what keeps you in college is oftentimes the people that you meet in the community that you build.
Man.
And so I work with those organizations that specialize in building and establishing that community. I also am lucky to be a facilitator on a wide variety of topics, and I love being able to teach. That is something that I truly have a passion for in that curriculum development of. I love being able to sit down with my notebook and, all right, we're going to start with pen to paper. Let's write this out. And then I type it out, and then I create the PowerPoint, and then I'm able to go into a classroom and train and facilitate, and to see that process step by step, I mean, brings me a lot of joy. So that's what I get to do. That's what I'm lucky to get to experience every single day. I've been in this field professionally for 4 years, but if you count 4 years of undergrad, 2 years in grad school where I was a part-time employee, I mean, my life has revolved around college for the last decade. I tell my wife all the time, I am on an academic calendar. If I ever had a job that wasn't in semesters, I wouldn't know what to do, man.
Yeah, man. I love talking about, I mean, me personally, I'm super passionate about education because, I've been in education for a long period of time. Even now, I'm not necessarily in K-12 education anymore, but I do adult education and stuff like that. How did you get to this point? Because for me to sit here in a room with someone who, like I said, looks like me, who, I'm not going to say I didn't necessarily grow up with you, but we were in the same sphere.
Right.
For me to be able to see someone close to me, where I am or higher, in terms of, just academic achievement and career achievement and stuff like that. It's amazing to me. And people don't realize sometimes when you get to the level where you are, it starts to become more rare to see people who look like you.
Yeah.
But what is it that you did different? Or what is it that you had that was different, that that made the difference? Let me say that.
Yeah. For sure. One, I would tell anyone, I am a people's person. I love people. I'm in the people business, and right now the people that I serve are 18 to 22-year-olds at a college campus. And I knew pretty early into my college experience that I could walk into any room, whether I knew everyone in the room or it was a room full of strangers, and I knew how to make myself comfortable, and I knew how to make others around me comfortable. And when I was able to hone in on that skill, it became pretty easy to me that I'm just gifted with a passion for young adults. That is just, I remember what it was like to be 18 and think you got it figured out. And now it's like, I knew nothing. I knew absolutely, I knew nothing, man. And I can look back at that and say, I'm really thankful I had someone that was willing to walk down that path with me. I had someone that was comfortable with having those conversations. And so when I was in undergrad, I figured out probably at the end of my junior year, close to probably end of my junior year, started that senior year, that I wanted to do this full time. I wanted to make sure that if I ever encountered a student, that they felt like they had someone in their corner. They didn't need to worry about how big or how small the mistake was, or how big or how small the success was, or the accomplishment. They had someone in their corner. Because while I had a great college experience, going back to that statistic that you gave earlier, there's a lot of people, they don't have anyone to celebrate those wins with them. And they don't have anyone to tell them that, hey, that hurdle, that loss that you took, it's a part of life. It's okay. We get back up and we try again. And so I try to make sure that I am that for anyone that I encounter. And you said it already, there's not a lot of people that look like us that you see on a college campus. So for me, it was important to, if I have a mom, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle that's coming to orientation, it's hard for me to sell to them, send your child here, send your loved one here, and them not have anyone to relate to on campus. Wow. Now, that doesn't mean that I can relate to everyone, because we all got different experiences and come from different backgrounds. But it's important to be a physical representation, to see, hey, here's a person that looks like me that walked this path and it worked out for them. Like I said, exposure leads to expansion. I believe you can't necessarily be what you don't see. So it's really important that we are painting a picture and showcasing people that walk the path that you want to walk down, and they made it, so thus far you can see that you made it as well.
Wow. Man, that's I mean, it's so surreal. It's so surreal to see how far you've come, like even the language. I mean, not how far you've come, but how you've evolved into, kind of the person that you are now, man. And I mean, I'm just extremely proud of you, and I'm proud for you.
Appreciate that,
because the opportunities that exist for people like yourself, I think, man, it's so wide, it's so broad. But like you said, it's not that it's not that you're just special, a lot of times. And I think that's where, a lot of kids get the idea mixed up.
Right.
Because, growing up, I was not what I am now, and not that I'm anything. No, for sure. No, I know what you mean. Now,
I know what you mean.
When I have times where I have reflective moments when I look back and I'm like, wow, like what the heck what is this? And I'll get in these rooms, man, and nobody looks like where I come from. And I'm like, if you knew what I was thinking in my head right now, if you knew the pictures, the videos, the images of where I come from, you would be amazed, and you would be like, how the heck are you in this room? And, I feel that. And I know that you probably feel the same way because, from what I've seen, and whether that be like pictures, of some of the things that you've done, I'm just like, man, bro, you in a whole nother class. And, man, that makes me extremely proud.
I appreciate that. I think something that I've had to learn, though, even with that, is that for so long, that was kind of the driving force. I used to always say, I want to be not in the place where the actions are happening, but I want to be in the rooms where they're being discussed. I want to be at the table where those policies are being talked about, where that idea was created. I want to be a fly on the wall. I want to, well, not just a fly on the wall, I want to have a seat at the table. And so that was the driving force for a long time. And I can say now, as a person that's been in those rooms, they're not as exciting as you think they would be. But that was what drove me for so long. That was the motivation I didn't just want to be a puppet that was enacting things. I wanted to be in the room where the strings were, to see how did we arrive at this point? How can I put myself in a situation where I can be the voice that I don't think is necessarily being communicated in that room right now? And luckily, some things have fallen my way and some dominoes have leaned in my direction, and I've been able to be in that situation. But also, it's a little bit of, man, like this is what it is. This is what it feels like. I mean, it's cool and all, but I thought it would feel different. I thought it would look different. And that's not the case. That's not how it works out, man.
And I'm still, and I feel that. I definitely feel that because, like I said, even when we traveled abroad or whatever, when we were over there, and I would find myself like maybe leading a professional development or something like that. In the moment, it was like, this is cool. Like leading up, knowing that you're about to get that opportunity, it's like, oh my God, this is cool. But once it's done, it's done.
Yep.
And you look at it for what it is, and it's like, man, this is not that it's underwhelming, but it's like, this is a moment.
Right.
Now I'm trying to figure out like how this leads to where I'm going next. That's how it was for me. But I want to take you back because you mentioned something I think was really interesting. You talked about just the confidence that you had, and I think in our in this generation of kids, of people in general, confidence is something that I think is lacking.
Yeah.
Just across the board. And I think a lot of the issues that come up, whether that be poverty or whether that be even things like racism, things like sexism or genderism or whatever ism is out there.
Yeah,
Usually
yeah.
I think it stems from a lot of just lack of self-confidence.
For sure.
And you said that was a key driving force behind how you got that.
Yeah.
How did your upbringing kind of get you to a point where you had or could build on the confidence that you had?
Yeah. Well, I'm the youngest of six. I have four brothers and two sisters. So I guess the youngest of seven. So I have four brothers and two sisters. And I remember my parents never made me fit into a box. They always encouraged me to, what do you want to do? You want to play baseball? Let's play baseball. You don't want to play baseball? All right, we're done with baseball. You want to play football? Let's play football. All right, you're done with football? We are done with football. But they always encouraged me to, if you're going to do something, you do it to the best ability that you have at that time. And you be confident in that ability. And that kind of instilled a little bit of confidence in me to say, if I'm going to do it, I got to put my best foot forward. And my dad is extremely important to me. That's my road dog. Everybody's got an ace. My dad is my ace. There's not a day that goes by that I don't call him. And my dad, from a very, very early age, instilled in me that making a mistake is not the problem. It's making the same mistake multiple times and not learning for it that it becomes an issue. So I never had a fear of being wrong.
Yeah.
I've always had a fear, or I've always had precautions about being wrong and not acknowledging it. And now I've been wrong several times in a row. And so for me, going back to that confidence, I've never been afraid of making the mistake. I've always been able to say, I'm going to move in the best way possible with the information I have right now. And if it doesn't work out, then guess what? We just going to pivot, turn around, and go a different direction, and life goes on. And that's that support system I've had my entire life. I can remember when I was in undergrad and applying to grad programs, and I was applying to all these different schools in different parts of the country and whatnot. And I remember calling my dad and saying, hey, I just want you to be proud of me. I don't want to make a mistake that will upset you. And he communicated, it's not about making me happy. You got to make your own life decision. And whatever decision you make at this time, we support, we back 100%, 10 toes down, we'll do it. And if it pans out to be wrong, guess what? We'll pack it up, we'll make another decision, and we'll head in that direction. So that confidence has been instilled in me of, I'm not afraid of making the mistake. I try to be very analytical and get all the things I need to get in order to make an educated decision. But guess what? If that decision don't work out, we just gonna go back to the drawing board, make another decision, and keep it pushing. Like that's just life. And I think that's so important that he instilled that in me, and he still practices that today. I'm about to be a dad, and I've called him several times about, hey, I don't know the difference between Pampers and Huggies. Like what are we doing, dog? And he's like, look, Ashton, you buy Pampers, and if the baby don't like Pampers, like then we go get some Huggies. That's just what it is. And so that's been super, super important to me, just to have that confidence of mistakes. Mistakes are going to happen. They're a normal part of life. Don't be afraid of making the mistake. Be intentional enough to notice that you made a mistake and not make that same mistake again.
I think there's a lot of people who, and I know myself, like, and I told my wife this, I was like, man, just seeing how you're moving, you remind me of something that I feel like I have inside of me too. And now hearing you say it, I'm like, man, that's exactly how I approach things. I'm never afraid. I'm the youngest of five. I've never been afraid to make a mistake.
Yeah.
I've never been afraid of that. I did struggle with, confidence as I got older, and I think that was a result of being around other people who weren't confident in themselves. So I definitely think that makes the difference. But man, what you said just about being able to be okay with making those mistakes, being okay with failing, and doing whatever you can to the highest ability. And I think this is where people get it twisted, because I've seen people go out and not be afraid to fail, but I've
Right.
not seen
Yeah.
people utilize to the greatest extent like the information that they have,
Right.
and not even just that they just have, but trying to go out and get more
Right. Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
That's where I think people kind of separate,
Mm-hmm.
from
Mm-hmm.
becoming or having some of those achievements that you have,
No.
or people
Yeah.
like you, and then kind of falling short of some of those things that they could have done. Um, but I think you said something that was also important. I think you mentioned something about your parents being
Mm-hmm.
there. Your parents being an extreme, a rock for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested in like how that looks now. Do they,
Yeah.
is it's still the same as it was back
Yeah,
then?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I gotta give this disclaimer. My parents are divorced,
Mm-hmm.
so when I talk about my mom and my dad, and they'll laugh if they see this or if they hear it. I tell them this all the time. Like, y'all didn't co-parent. I had a parent and a parent. There was
Mm-hmm.
no collaboration. There
Wow.
was no. We're on the same page. My mom did things 1, 2, 3, and my dad did 4, 5, 6, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just how it was. But they always gave me the ultimate support. That was the one thing that didn't waver, didn't change. If my mom said put my socks on right, left, my dad probably said it don't matter, do what you want to. So like it's just
Yeah.
they were very different, but what never changed was the support. And I hear people talk about all the time about you raise a child till they're 18 and they get out the house and they go and become an adult. That's not my experience because I still talk to my parents weekly.
Mm-hmm.
I still call my parents and get their opinions on things, even now as a family man myself,
Mm-hmm.
as a soon to be dad, and that hasn't changed. That hasn't shifted. They still try to figure out ways to play an active role in my life
Mm-hmm.
as an adult. I will say the biggest shift that's happened is when I was in college, I was calling them, or in high school, I was calling them and asking about, hey, what do I need to do if this XYZ happens?
Mm-hmm.
And now I call them to say, hey, when you were in this situation, what was your thought process?
Man.
What are some factors that you considered before you made that decision? And they recognize that at this point in life, I do not have to listen to anything that they say, but I
Mm-hmm.
take it and it means something to me, and I
Yeah.
consider it before I make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
We have adult relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I am not their child who happens to be an adult. I am an adult who is also their child, and that changes how we engage, how we talk, because they understand he is grown. He's going to do what he wants to do.
Right.
It's best for us to have a relationship where he feels comfortable coming to us
Mm-hmm.
or talking to us, because we don't want to mess this up. And then it's like, well, he'll just quit calling, he'll quit showing up. And so
Mm-hmm.
we are very intentional about making sure that we build and we nourish and we water and we grow that adult relationship, because that's where we're going to be from here on out. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going back to Pampers and diapers.
Right.
Me and my dad had this conversation in the car. I was talking to him in the car as I was driving over here
Yeah.
about, Pops, there's not going to be a day where I need you to pick me up because I'm afraid of the monster under my bed.
Mm-hmm.
But there 100% is going to be several days in the future where I need you to tell me, hey, how do I lead my family?
Yeah.
How do I be a man? And that was a great season of life where I needed you to pick me up and save me from the monster, but we're not there anymore. Moving
Mm-hmm.
forward, we got to have these conversations about being a father, being a man, being a leader, being a support, all of those things. And so we got to stay in a place where we can have that transparency and have that conversation, because that's what's going to carry us forward and not have us revert back to where we were.
Man, and I think not only that conversation, but to speak to that, just the evolution of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
The evolution of parent-child relationships. And I always, whenever I see chaos in the world, whenever I look at it and pay attention to the news or whatever's going on, my mind automatically goes back to family,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the first society, and there's all kinds of statistics and evidence and stuff like that that proves how you are raised, or how you handle your society at home, kind of determines how you
Mm-hmm.
interpret things outside in the real world, how you go about, just, whatever it is that you do in your life. It all stems from what you get at home a lot of times, which I think is very pivotal. But that being said, we have to have conversations about how our relationships are exactly what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Our relationships are not, oh, I'm a child or I'm your child and I'm an adult.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, I'm an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you don't necessarily get to
Right.
treat me like a child
Right,
anymore.
right. There's still a power dynamic here, and
Exactly.
you respect that play for
Right.
sure.
And I'm always an advocate of respecting your parents, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
care, where your parents are and what the whole situation is. I think just a parent deserves a level of respect, and I'm gonna leave it at that. But it becomes really difficult,
Mm-hmm.
because I know that sometimes parents still want to treat you like a
Mm-hmm.
child,
Yeah.
and nowadays, like you said people expect people to leave the house at 18, and it's like, you don't necessarily have to do that anymore. I mean, and it shows that more people are staying home,
Yeah. Yeah.
till they're well into their,
And
early
I would
30s.
encourage that. Listen, don't rush this life thing. Listen, if you can stay at home
Exactly.
and save some money and be with the family, do that,
And
man.
it's real, and that's real. But at the same time, you can't do that unless you have that evolved relationship where it's like, look, I'm here. I am your child, but I'm an adult. I have my own life. Myself, like you. I have a wife. I have 2 kids. You know what I'm saying? And it's like when I come and talk to my mom, when I come to go to talk to my mom, I'm not conversing with my mom about certain things that I would have done when I was home.
Right.
And it's just that relationship has evolved. And I think more parents have to listen to that, have to take heed to that, because now you get parents who are children. And it's like you get a child raising another child. And I used to see this all the time when I was in the classroom, and now that I'm not in the classroom, I get even more annoyed because it's like, man, I can just see how childish, we are. And I think that's super important. Having a father is important. That's an important piece. Having a mother is an important piece. And then having 2 parents at the same time who are still trying to push their child forward is key to building confidence.
Right.
But it only works if they're willing to give you the wheel, if they're willing to let you take it over. And
and you got to be comfortable with, I could wreck, and I'm probably going to wreck.
Yes.
And that goes back to that whole mistake thing. I've never felt like that was the biggest problem. If the worst thing that happens is I got the life wheel and I get into a fender bender or I hit a sign, guess what? We'll fix the car.
Yeah.
Get in a new one and go forward. Like, I don't know. It's hard to explain because that's just how I've grown up, but that's just never been a fear of theirs. Now, at some point in time, they definitely had me bubble wrapped and I mean, all of that. But at this stage of life, it's like, hey, actually, you got to go out here and make it for yourself. You got to go out here and make your own decisions. And hopefully you get that we have taught you enough that we support you whether you go right or left. But you got to make that decision for yourself, and you got to be comfortable with living with that decision. And like I said, the good and the bad that comes with that. I remember when I was going to grad school, one of the biggest things that we were getting into confrontations about was I wanted to stay in the small town I went to undergrad. I didn't want to leave. And my dad was like, why do you want to stay? Why do you say? I'm like, well, I'm comfortable here. I know everybody. I know the professors. I know that. What if I go there and it doesn't work out and I fail and boom, boom, boom. He said, and if you go there and you fail, you'll come home and we'll make a new plan and we'll go from there. But don't not make the decision for what could go wrong negatively, because you could get in that situation and everything work perfectly. And it did. It worked out. I went to UT and I got my master's, and it was the best possible situation for me. I didn't have any of those negative experiences that kind of I was afraid of. But if I had been afraid and let that drive my decision, when I was in undergrad, I would have never, who's to tell you where I would be right now? I don't really know if I get the position at the place I'm at right now if I don't go to Knoxville and get in rooms with certain people and learn some skills. But that was a decision that I needed to make, and I needed to be comfortable with making this decision can go really well for me, and making this decision could go bad for me, but I got to weigh those pros and cons, and the only person that can tell me how that weighs out is myself.
Yeah. And that fear is important because it stops a lot of people. You know, when you look at those statistics and see only half people even try or attempt university level, you know, it's like, for what? And I think society, man, the information goes around so fast now, and you know, me now being in the tech world or whatever, I can see how quickly information is passed, and that's good, but it's also really, really bad because, you know, there's a lot of people who think they know what's going on. And I mean, I don't claim to know everything, but I do a lot of studying. And I'm not talking about looking online. I'm talking about, you know, reading academic journals and learning about, you know, these institutions and what's really going on in on the inside. And I love that about, you know, my higher education experience because it gave me those techniques.
Right, for sure.
You know, but people are now afraid to venture off because there are so many ways, or I guess people think there are so many new ways to fall off or to get sidetracked or to fail. But really, it's always been there. Nothing's really changed.
You just know about it.
Now you just know that it exists.
Yeah.
And it makes people more afraid to even try. You know, it makes people less likely to take out loans. And, you know, I don't really, I'm not telling anybody to go take out loans.
Yeah.
But
that's a whole nother conversation.
But let me tell you, if you got to step out of your comfort zone to make a move, and even if you don't even know it's a 100% guarantee, and I think that's what stops people from going to the university is it's not a 100% guarantee. But let me tell you something. There is no 100% guarantee whatsoever.
Correct.
But that fear of unknown, it stops so many people from even attempting to do something beyond where they are. And when I was in high school, there was this movie that I watched. I'm not going to say the name of the movie, but it was a wonderful movie. And the main character said this line. He said that it's hard to see I can't even remember how he said it, but I know he was saying like it's hard to see the future when you're kind of boxed into the community that you're in. It's hard to see what's out there. It's hard to see all the opportunities when the people who are around you have kept you boxed in, not necessarily on purpose, but because of their fears and their insecurities. They feed a lot of information to you. Working in higher education, do you see that? Do you see people who, I don't know how closely you work with students, but do you see, even at the higher education level, do you see a lack of expectation, you know, just for, you know, what life could be if they just maybe push a little bit harder outside of their comfort zone?
I think where I currently am right now, I see the opposite. I see somebody or someone or something has put so much expectation on them that now they feel like their whole purpose is to fulfill this expectation that someone has placed on them. And so because they are constantly achieving and striving to fulfill that expectation, now they don't feel like they have time to make a mistake, right? Because grandma, dad, mom, family, brother, sister, somebody told you, you're going to go to this school, you're going to do XYZ thing, you're going to graduate, you're going to go work XYZ job, and that's what you're going to be. And they come in with this mindset and from this standpoint of, this is just a transition. I am just here to get to the next phase. And they don't truly embrace, what expectations do you have for yourself? What is your self-value, your self-worth? Not what someone has put on you or what someone has told you. How do you feel about this? And so a lot of the conversations that I have with students is trying to get them to grapple with and understand that for many of them, for 18, 19, sometimes 20 years, they've been told that they were going to be something. And maybe for the first time when they come to college, I encourage them to think, what do you want to be? Not
Right.
what someone told you to be or what someone said you're going to do or major in or go into the career of, but
Mm-hmm.
what do you want for yourself? And many of them, it's the first time that they're like, wait, I get to have my own set of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
I get to I get to define what I want to do, my own value, my own, like,
That's big.
it's the first time that that light bulb comes on for them.
That's big.
And it's difficult because, as you know, for many of them, they go off to college. So, like, their family isn't in the city or town or place where they live.
Yeah.
And so they get to almost create this identity on campus. And now, when they go home for Thanksgiving break, winter break, spring break, now they got to figure out, well, I got my own set of expectations that I operate with here on campus.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like when I go back home and we're at the dinner table and I got
Mm-hmm.
to go back to these expectations that other people have put on me?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big thing
And
there.
And I can actually speak to that because, okay, so there's two experiences I had. One was teaching here where I saw that a lot of kids did not have expectation.
Right.
They didn't have expectation. When I was like tutoring at the college level, I would see that a lot of the students had no, even though they were on campus, they weren't going to classes.
Right. Yeah.
They
yeah,
weren't really engaging in all the opportunities that were there. And for me, that just showed just kind of a lack of expectation.
Mm-hmm.
I might be kind of, jumping too far ahead in their lives, as I'm
Sure.
judging them.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's certain signs where you're like, okay, you must not really take it serious, like where you are right now. And then in K-12, it was really, really bad. A lot of kids had no idea where they wanted to be past the year, had no idea like what things they wanted to get into outside of, some things that their parents might have said. And even their parents didn't really have those kind of expectations either, at least not for school. But when I went to China and I taught at an international institution, and international is just like, I guess they're like extremely prestigious school or whatever. I saw some of the most brilliant students. I mean, they had it. They had everything. They were the ones you wouldn't have to call or have to, tell multiple times to do homework. You didn't have to tell them to do a project. You didn't. You never had to tell them to go above and beyond.
About. Yeah.
But man, when I would sit down and have these conversations with these kids who were, the ninth graders were like 12th graders here.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
When I would have conversations about where they wanted to be, what they wanted to do, where they saw themselves, and why they saw themselves there, almost never had I heard someone say they wanted to be somewhere because it was something they loved to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was always, my parents want me to do science. They want me to do some form of finance or some form of business, entrepreneurship in some kind of area that they've already predetermined.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the parent's going to pay for it.
Yep.
But the child had no clue. And I don't know if that's good or bad. My experience tells me that somebody's going to have a feeling of regret later on. They may be financially stable, but that feeling of regret is always there because you have to have, I feel, we all need our chance to find certain things,
right?
To dig around for ourselves, even if our parents see, qualities that we have.
Sure.
But these parents that I wouldn't see over there, it wasn't that they were just, oh, you're really good at that thing, so I want you to do blah, blah, blah. It was something different. It was like, the world values this skill. You do everything to get this skill, and that's going to make you this. And then, one of the reasons the suicide rate is so high over there is because when kids get in the position that you're talking about, where they get to determine for themselves, it's not always beautiful.
It's not an easy conversation to have.
It's not, because it's like there's so much thought that goes into there, and some kids snap, they break. And man, if you go to China, you'll see that some of the schools have bars on the balconies because of the amount of suicides that take place. And I might be over exaggerating to an extent, but when you go there and you look at the schools, don't wonder why they have bars.
Yeah,
that's why.
That's wild.
It's
man.
crazy.
Yeah.
Even at the school that I was at, we had a suicide attempt, and it was really like that because kids, even though they can't tell you. They want to explore.
Right.
They want to try
Yeah,
to figure
they
it out
have
for
that. They have
themselves.
that desire in the back of their mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's so important. That's so important. I really think, going back to the original question you asked, probably when I was going through my own schooling, I was around more people that didn't have expectations. They were just kind of like, "Hey, I'm here.
Same.
I'm here on the day to day. I hope I make it to the end of the semester. If I got the grades to stay, I'll come back another semester and we'll take it from that approach." But on my day to day work environment, I'm on the opposite end, man. I'm on the end of they come in with the expectation of, you know what? I'm here for a purpose. I'm here for one purpose, and that is to graduate. And I'm trying to streamline it as much as possible to where I get there quickly, quick, fast, in a hurry, get out and on to the next thing. And that is, I just think that is so sad because you miss the growth and the experience and the exposure that you could have on a college campus because you are so hyper focused on the next 2 or 3 steps and not taking the joy and the beauty and living in the moment.
I did that. That is exactly what I did. I was more so in survival mode. Like, I'm gonna get this. I'm not going on campus. I'm like, I'm just gonna live over here. I'm gonna go on and leave. I'm not joining no fraternities. I'm not joining no academic groups, no honors class, nothing. I just want to go, be done. And I did get some advice from someone who was who gave me my tutoring job or position, whatever it was. I wasn't getting paid for it. She was like, don't think so much about your future that you don't really participate in what's happening
in
around you right now in the present. And now I can tell my wife that same thing. But I mean, of course, my wife is in a different position. We got kids, we got home, stuff to take care of, full-time job, blah blah blah. So it's a little bit different, but I still try to give her that because it was like, let me just show you where I was. I didn't get to do anything because I was too focused on everything else.
Focused on the end goal.
Yeah, so I try to throw her that advice, and it is difficult to do as you get older. It's much difficult to do when you get those responsibilities, but it's something everybody's got to consider.
No, for sure. And we can't get so caught up in using a baseball analogy. We can't get so caught up in hitting a home run that we forget how to celebrate just getting on base. Or we can't get so caught up on getting back to home plate and scoring that we don't take in the journey it takes to get from home plate to first to second to third to home. Because once you make it to home plate, guess what? You're done. That whole experience is done. The next time, it could be a different pitcher, a different game. There's so many factors that change. It's important to take in the experience and the journey that's happening around you because you'll blink and it's over with. The age-old saying, colleges are the best years of your life. For some people, that is true. For a lot of people, college is a little bit more difficult. But whatever it is, that's an experience in life that you don't get back. Some of the things that I reflect back on, I'm like, you want to know what I can't do right now in life? Stay up till 2:00 in the morning studying, writing a paper. I just can't do it. But for that season of life, I loved it. I did all my homework, all my writing from 10 to 2 a.m. because that's when the world kind of slows down. That's when people are going to bed. Social media is not popping. So every night from 10 to 2,
I was a good one.
I was writing. I was doing my work. Now, if you told me right now, Ashton, you got to stay up from 10 to 2 and do academic work, absolutely not,
You're
man.
Right.
No. But that was a season of life, and I value that season because now, can't do it. It's gone.
So, I mean, I love hearing about just all these different, like your perspective. I love hearing about kind of like where you started from, but I'm interested now in like, where are you right now? Like, where do you see yourself right now? How do you feel about where you are right now in this present moment?
Yeah. I think I kind of talked on it a little bit at the beginning or even when we were having just conversation. Getting set up and everything. Since you graduate college when you're 20. Since I was 21. Since I was 21, I've had this goal, this dream of I want to be in the room where it happens. I want to be at the table. I want to know I want to be able to name the names and put the faces together of the people that make the decisions at these colleges, universities, institutions, cities, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's been the goal for so long. And now that I've gotten a small taste of it, like I said, I've been very, very blessed and lucky that some cards have fallen in my direction, and I've been able to meet people and engage with people and know people that are in these rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm having a little bit of I'm going to say I got to reframe some things, because I don't know if that's what gets me out of bed anymore. For so long, getting in the room was the driving force.
Yeah.
And now I don't care about being in the room. I rather make an impact on the floor. And that is now where, for me, it's how do I continue to make an impact on people?
Yeah.
I said earlier, I'm a people's person.
Mm-hmm.
I want to, whatever I do, wherever I'm led, wherever I go, I want to make sure that I'm having a positive influence, a positive impact on people.
Yeah.
And sometimes the people that are in those rooms where those decisions are made are the furthest ones from the people that I'm trying to have the influence on.
That's
so
real.
Now it's that dichotomy
That's
of, do you want to be in the room where you're affecting them, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't have any connection with them?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be in a position where you're influencing them, you're with them day to day, but you're not in the room where those decisions are happening?
That's good.
And so I'm trying to navigate that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what
That's
that.
a good breakdown of that.
I'm trying to navigate and figure out what that means, because the factors that drove me to get into this field are not the same factors that are keeping me in the field.
Man.
The landscape of higher ed is changing. The students are different. The politics are different. Like there's so many things. And so now that purpose is changing, I now got to figure out, well, how do I fulfill this purpose in a different way, or in a more intentional way going forward? And a lot of that has to do with getting married, growing a family, like thinking about.
Let's talk about this family real quick, because I'm interested. The last time that I talked with you or interacted with you, we were at a football game in I cannot remember the name. You were at Good Pasture.
Yeah.
You were at Good Pasture, and I think you guys were playing. It might have been Hillsboro or
Cane Ridge, one of them.
It was someone, and that was my last time, like, just kind of seeing you. But you were a kid, like you didn't have bills.
No. I was living rent free, not a problem in the world for sure.
Now, man, you've totally just kind of evolved into this grown professional,
right?
And I'm interested, like, how have things changed for you?
Yeah.
Like, from that point. So you were this skinny little kid, and now you're
now I'm a husband, a soon to be father. It's changed everything, man.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, going back to that driving force, when you talk about the confidence and all of this, and how I got to where I was, it was easy because I was only thinking about myself. If I'm being completely honest, there's a little bit of selfishness that you gotta have to grind and to get to those places, because you gotta be thinking about, how is this going to impact me? Where is this going to put me in the big picture? And so I was like, that was kind of, that's how it worked. When I met my wife, the whole game changed, because it shifted 100% from how does this affect me and what benefits me, to how does this affect and benefit us?
Yeah.
It may be something that benefits me doesn't benefit her. And that's not fair for me to put her in an uncomfortable situation just because it benefits and drives, me. And so that's been the biggest change in talking about, like I said, my purpose. I used to have no problem staying at work till 7:30 at night, 8:30 at night, if it meant having a meeting with a student, giving them support, providing them all that type of stuff. Now, that looks a lot different when I have a wife at home.
Yeah.
I have a wife that I haven't seen since 6:30, 7 o'clock that morning.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm not getting home until 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night. Well, it's about to be time to go to bed and get up and do it
Right.
all over again. So it now is not only how can I show up as my best self for the students, for the people that I'm working with every day, but how can I show up for my best self at home? Because it's not fair to give 100% to work and then walk in the door and she gets
10%.
Exactly. It's not fair. And I've had to learn that. That is not something that I just, figured out. Like,
my wife is clapping right now.
Listen,
if she's watching this, she is clapping.
Listen, it's hard to figure out that balance. But I think the longer that we're married and our family's about to grow, so now it's not just about, okay, how do I show up as the best husband? I'm thinking about how can I show up as the best father? How can I show up as the best dad? What does it look like for, all right, I got to give 100% at work, and then I got to find 100% somewhere between the car ride home to walk in the door and try to give my best effort at home. And it's not fair for them to get less of me because work got all of me that day. And it's not fair for me to show up at work and give less to my students because the family got everything. So it's trying to figure out, what does that harmony look like? How do those things coincide and mesh together? And that's where I'm at. That is why I feel like I'm in this dichotomy right now, figuring out what allows me to be in the best possible situation to first support and be there for my family. And secondly, allows me to come and work in a career, in an environment where I feel like I'm walking in my purpose. I'm walking in my calling.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's dope, man. First of all, I appreciate you even, coming on the show and sharing everything that you've shared, man. I think we definitely have to do this more. And one of the reasons I started this podcast is because I know there's a lot of conversations that need to be had. And I think I do a lot of thinking. I'm a thinker. And a lot of times, 90% of the time, the stuff that I'm thinking, they don't come out in the form of action.
Right.
And I think one of my little steps of like making more action is, hosting a podcast where I get to talk to people who, have interesting perspectives and who also can be real about, just certain things that I'm not familiar with, so that the conversation can be had and open up doors for, people who might not have the confidence or people who might not understand how higher education works or, all these other different things that are out there. But, man, I really appreciate you.
Nah, man, I appreciate it.
I feel like I've learned so much.
Listen, it's dope to have this conversation because for so long we didn't have this conversation. People didn't feel comfortable talking about this. And I said it at the beginning, I say it again. I truly believe exposure leads to expansion. And so we got to put ourselves in situations and environments where we can get exposed to different things so we can see, hey, maybe that glass ceiling that I thought was there actually isn't there because someone has the key. Someone has the knowledge to, to move around it, to go through it.
Yeah.
I got sayings for days about knowledge, but I mean, I think we really got to do a good job of creating generational knowledge. Yeah. I believe it's hard to talk about generational wealth if you don't talk about generational knowledge and making sure that we're having these conversations and we're communicating this to people, because that's the key. That's the real secret sauce in all of this is knowledge. Don't fall over the same hurdle that we fell over 2 generations ago. But in order to avoid that hurdle, someone from 2 generations ago has to be comfortable talking about it and being vulnerable and creating a space for that to be a collaboration. So I tell anyone, hey, anyone wants to reach out to me, sit down and talk, I'm an open book. I truly believe it's not about how far I go or how successful I am, but it's about making sure that no one else walks into these situations without having this knowledge of this is what worked for me. It may not work for you exactly the same way, but I can give you my knowledge and my experience and hope that you go further and are better than I am with the knowledge that I have. So it's all about passing it down, man. Yeah. All about passing it down.
I appreciate you. Thank you guys for tuning into the Regular People podcast, where we interview people who are regular, but also who do crazy, amazing things. And I think this is a perfect example. Make sure you guys tune in for the next episode. And if you're looking to be featured on the podcast, please just reach out. I would love to have you. You don't have to have no fancy title. I know you got a fancy title, but you don't have to have no fancy title. You don't have to do anything. We're interested in stories. We're interested in real stories from real people where we can get real advice on how not to fall over some of the same hurdles that our forefathers or the people before us have fallen over anyway. But I appreciate you guys. And tune in next time. Thanks, Doc.
No, yeah, for sure.